Patreon Q&A 158. There's going to be spoilers for all of the series I'm going to be talking about, so tread carefully. Mateo asks, I have a theory. What if Deku had the All-for-One quirk, but it was stolen by Dr. Garaki? Then we can have the moment that All-for-One, inspired by Darth Vader, told Deku, I am your father. So I'm actually going to be talking about this in a video that's going to be released soon on the Anime Uproar channel, but I'll talk about it here too. So yes, I do think it's very possible that Izuku may have been born with All-for-One, and All-for-One being his father. But as for him being a vessel, I don't think that's necessarily the case, because it was explained to us how he is able to hold All-for-One, and that All-for-One itself is just represented as one super powerful quirk and not 7 individual quirks. But him being born quirkless allegedly allows him to have All-for-One with no drawbacks. But as for him possibly have been born with All-for-One makes sense, because if we go back to like the very first chapter or the very first episode, Yujiko is hiding in plain sight, and he is specifically chosen to be the one to tell Deku that he is quirkless and shows them the x-ray. Don't you think that's interesting? And also that, like underneath the hospital, he has like a quirk library, and it's like, how did he get all of those quirks? And it's very possible that quite a few of them have come from All-for-One, just naturally taking them from people throughout the years. But there also is the possibility and theory that he has like this child quirk theft ring going on, as to where either he's taking quirks from children like as soon as they're born, because I guess it is possible, since the very first quirk discovered was a glowing baby, so I guess you can have your quirk factor like as soon as you're born, and then he can just remove it then. But Izuku being born with All-for-One could explain how it's being duplicated, because that was never explained. Like, how did 9 get his All-for-One, and how did All-for-One get his copy of All-for-One in the interim when the original one was given to Shigaraki? But why would it be Izuku? Like, why would All-for-One target Izuku's mom, Inko? Well, that's really like the million-dollar question, I guess, going into this theory. But it is mentioned like at least twice, I think, that Inko resembles Nana. And we know that All-for-One purposely chose Shigaraki because he's the grandson of Nana. So All-for-One has some kind of like fixation on her, and just One for All in general. And All Might, of course. So it's possible that maybe Inko is like the niece of Nana, maybe, and then Izuku would be her nephew, and also Shigaraki's cousin. But aside from all of that, it could just go back to Horikoshi loving Star Wars, because like what Mateo said, with it just being a parallel to Luke and Darth Vader. Now there's another possibility that maybe if he wasn't born with All-for-One, then he was born with DK, because Shigaraki is 5 years older than Izuku, and when Shigaraki's DK bloomed, it was when he was 5 years old. And going into that theory, allegedly All-for-One gave Shigaraki the DK quirk. Like at the beginning of chapter 235, he's dropping him off to his mom, or at least allegedly he is. It's never been confirmed that that is in fact All-for-One yet, but I'm 100% positive it is. So given that the timeline and the ages line up here, I don't think that it's a coincidence, right? It seems like that could have been purposely done, because it's also said that DK is like a new rare variant quirk that had been discovered. So it doesn't have to be like the telekinesis quirk that Izuku's mom has, or the fire breathing quirk that his dad has, which could just be one of All-for-One's quirks that we haven't seen yet, allegedly. But in the end, it's a possibility that none of this is true, and Horikoshi just goes in another direction. Zapphod B asks, what monster other than Boros would you like to see return from the dead, or at least have some of their design features reused? I really want to see another Withered Sprout. So I bet you do, Zapphod. I think you're the #1 ranked Withered Sprout fan in the world. But other than Boros, I'd like to see Goketsu come back. I would have liked to have seen what happened if Goketsu had survived on into like where we are right now in the manga. But even if he were to just somehow come back after this arc, that would be incredible too, even though there's next to like 0% chance of it happening. Little Ferrari asks, do you think King's abilities work on Blast, or do you think Blast is so ridiculously powerful that he could just see King as a normal person? So that's one of the million-dollar questions, at least in my opinion, because I've been wondering this myself for a while. I think I maybe even made a video about this last year. But to be honest, I just don't really know. It's a 50-50. I could see Blast seeing King, in a similar light that Saitama does, but at the same time, I could also see him just seeing King the way that everyone else does. But maybe less fear and admiration than the others, and more like of a mutual respect type of thing, kind of like how Tatsumaki sees King. I think it's most likely that's how Blast will see him. Awakened Saitama asks, if Silverfang uses the explosion release fist, if he uses it at all, do you think it will give a sort of edge for him in the fight, or do you think it will still end in sort of a tie? Thanks. So I think he will use it. Somebody's got to use it, right? Because it was name dropped here, and I don't think it's just going to be Garo using it. So I think once Garo like snaps out of feral state that he has been in, because we see his eyes cracking at the end of the previous chapter, I think he'll probably continue to fight Bang, but he's going to be much stronger, just like he was with Darkshine. Like once he came to, he started to like slowly dominate Darkshine, and I assume the same thing is going to happen here with Bang. Maybe Bang is forced to use Explosion Release Fist, but at that point it seems like maybe it won't even matter. Samurai asks, now I know Star can't beat Shigaraki due to narrative and whatnot, but what if she takes away her super strength rule and applies 2 rules to each Shigaraki and All for One that either of their hearts will stop or something like that? Now she can certainly do that, but it doesn't seem like it would matter, because if it did, then Shigaraki's consciousness would have died when she made that rule originally, right? So it seems like her quirk doesn't affect the vestige world, so that's how it's getting around this. And in order for her quirk to work, she has to like literally name the person that is in front of her, which technically doesn't have a name, I guess, unless they identify themselves. So there's no way that she could know the name, unless she can make a rule that's like, I know the name of this person, but I don't know if it could go that far. Natedawg asks, what do you want to see from Star and Stripe? I think it would be cool if she realizes she's about to lose, she gets rid of super strength and replaces it with super speed and zips out of there. That would be pretty cool, and yes, she could totally do that. I don't see why not. And I'd also like to see how far she can go with her abilities, but unfortunately I don't think we're going to see much more of her and her use of it, because Shigaraki / All for One is going to take it, in my opinion. So then it ultimately comes down to like, what are they going to do with it? And that's what I've been wondering for a while now, and I really don't know, because they can almost literally do anything. Extinction Team 75 asks, who do you believe would win in a match between Lightning Max and Tenya Ida? So probably Lightning Max. The One Punch Man world and power scale is much higher than the My Hero world, and Lightning Max like fought against Deep Sea King and lived, so I think just by virtue of that, he would probably be able to defeat Ida, who I think would probably die instantly if he were to fight Deep Sea King. Sean H asks, if you could have any Bankai / Resurrection, what would you choose? So that's as equally awesome as it is a difficult question. So I could just break this question here and be like, yeah, I want Aizen's Bankai, but I know that isn't fair, so instead I'll take Ukiura's Resurrection. So that's pretty much it for the video today, guys. I want to thank all of my patrons for continuing to support me. I really appreciate it, guys. And if you would like to be in next week's Q&A, simply check out the Patreon. The link is in the description. And if you liked the video, please give it a like, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day. See you in the next one.